what that represents to the tree. What would happen to the trees, do you think, if they didn't? What if the tree was like, "Ah, these leaves, they've been so good to me, they've fed me all summer. They're such an important part of my existence. I know that it's time to let them go, but I just can't." And then we get 6 inches of wet, heavy snow. Anybody who's seen one of those crazy freak snowstorms that we sometimes get in late May or June, and the devastation that you see around the neighborhood, that's what can happen to us when we hold on to the things that served that are no longer serving. I know that because I've broken myself by doing that. Luckily, though, we can release things as a conscious action. We can do it deliberately. We can do it before it's too late. We can do it before we're in so much pain that we don't have a choice anymore. And that's why willingness is so important. Without it, releasing things is a struggle. It's painful. As Linda said a couple of weeks ago, the things that we release then have claw marks. We can do it with willingness, then it becomes a gentle process, something that brings freedom, something that brings peace. For me, I always, um, when I start to think about my willingness, um, I see it as an uh, no, I wrote this down. It's late. It's later in the talk. First I want to look at the obstacles. Why is it hard for me? What are the things that might make it um, more difficult for me to have that willingness? And I think I talked about this last. Yeah, I was. This is interesting, I guess. Maybe not, but I was looking back, and I have notes from November of last year where we talked about the blessings of release, and from the year before that when it was um, letting go of false beliefs. And so I just end up talking in November, I guess. Um, but I did get to talk last time about some of these obstacles, and but I thought it was such an important part of my process that I wanted to touch on them again real quick. Um, so I think what I learned last time was that all of the obstacles are rooted in fear. Um, it's maybe because the thing that I'm holding on to was tied to my survival or my ability to feel safe. Um, in my life, those things have turned out to be stuff like I need to control my surroundings and the people around me, needing to have everybody doing the right thing, getting along with everybody else, and you know, not getting too high, not getting too low, feeling the feelings that I needed them to feel. And I spent a lot of time and effort and did a lot of harm in my life trying to get people to do what I needed them to do so that I could feel safe. Kind of along with that goes people pleasing, needing other people to think well of me in order for me to feel okay. Um, some things that I recognized as um, things that I've become willing to release because they're may have served at one point but are no longer serving. Um, Oftentimes, the things that I'm struggling that I can't bring that willingness to easily, it's because it's tied to my self-esteem or my ego as as it may be called in a lot of our literature. Um, Maybe something I've received positive attention for in the past, or something that I've attached to my identity. Um, I don't know who I would be without it. Um, in those cases, I find it helpful um, to maybe that's not important because it's not in my head anymore. It was there 2 minutes ago. I'm 44. I didn't think that I was going to start having those issues yet, but here they are. Um, Whatever that was, I don't think it was important. This one is a big one for me. This is the last block that I tend to run into. Um, it's because I think that by letting go of this, of whatever thing I'm holding on to, um, that means I was wrong to need it to begin with. But because I don't need it now, then I was a fool to ever have needed it. Um, there's a something in psychology called belief perseverance, and something else that goes with it that they call the backfire effect. So I was reading about this was in 1992. They did a study where they took 19 scientists, people who were working as all had PhDs in one field or another of natural sciences, and they were working as researchers or professors in major universities. And they carried out this experiment where they um, had these subjects spend about 4 hours following instructions um, from this hands-on manual. And at a certain point, the manual had included a formula for calculating the volume of a sphere. But it was wrong. It was incorrect. Like it was included in there incorrectly, which would lead a person using the formula to the conclusion that the sphere had 50% larger volume than it actually should. Um, so then following this, they were given an actual sphere and they were asked to calculate the volume of it and then compare that to the actual volume of it by filling it up with water and then measuring the amount of water that filled it. And and then they repeated it a couple more times after that. And of 19 professional scientists, 18 of them continued to hold to the formula that came from the instruction manual rather than the evidence of seeing that with their own eyes, simply because it was what they had attached to first. For so many of us, for me, for sure, um, I've struggled the hardest to let go of the things that I have believed the longest. So as we move on, just want to encourage you to be aware of things that you might find yourself struggling to let go of, and just paying attention to what is the source of that resistance. What might be that blocker to the willingness. I found it really interesting that uh, the emphasis on the importance of release comes up all around us. Um, Multiple different religious traditions or spiritual practices emphasize the importance of release. We see it in places like the Bible. Jesus was reported to have encouraged his prospective followers to detach from the concerns of this world in multiple places. Um, when he encourages the rich man to sell everything you own and give the money to the poor and then come follow me. Or when he encouraged the man to deny himself, take up a cross and follow me, be willing to pay any price in the name of spiritual progress, in the name of bringing forth that consciousness in ourselves. Or when the guy's like, well, wait a minute, I want to come, I want to follow you. My dad just died. I've got to bury my dad, and then I'm coming. And Jesus said, let the dead bury the dead. Come with me now. In all of these cases, just reaffirming that um, that Christ consciousness, that energy vibration um, that we all want to resonate to, that brings us uh, to that place where we want to be in our spiritual journey. It, it's not more or less important. It just exists in a different state than the things that I tend to think are important right here and now. Um, Hello? Go. No, I think we're dead. No, we're still alive. Okay. I don't know. Saw the red light. I wasn't sure what that meant. Um, and then one of the Buddha's famous teachings that I found uh, interesting to this topic is called the parable of the raft, where he likened his own spiritual teachings to using a raft to cross like a quickly flowing river. And um, I say a man's trapped on one side of the river, and on this side of the river, there's danger. There's maybe it's a predator or a natural disaster, who knows? But there's fear, danger, and uncertainty. And on the far side is safety. There's no bridge spanning the river, nor is there a ferry to cross over. So what does he do? Yeah, now it's working. How about now? Oh, okay, here we go. Okay. On the other side was a microphone with fresh batteries. Uh, okay, so there's no bridge, there's no ferry. Um, so he gathers together some logs and leaves and vines, and using his skills, he fashions a raft from these materials. Using his hands and his knowledge and his feet, he paddles his raft and manages to get across the river from the dangerous side to the safe side. And then the Buddha asks us a question. He says, what do you think if this man, having crossed over the river and thought to himself, this raft has served me really well? I think I'll carry it on my back over the land now. Well, the monks replied that this would not be a very sensible idea to cling to the raft in such a way. The Buddha goes on to say, what if he lay the raft down gratefully, thinking that this raft has served him well, but is no longer of use, and can thus be laid down upon the shore? The monks replied that this would be the proper attitude. So the Buddha concluded by saying, so it is with my teachings, which are like a raft, and are for crossing over with, not for seizing a hold of. And this speaks to uh, another a Buddhist concept that I was learning about, which is just the idea of non-attachment, where rather than detachment being, this thing that we think of that where we're letting go of something that we're holding tightly to, but rather understanding the transient nature of our experience. Uh, you know, I think it was described as being in the flow of life, that um, I get to have a sense of wonder and curiosity that things come to me and things pass, and I release them in that proper time, and it lets me be in that flow, and um, rather than getting myself stuck. So the thing that preparing for this talk taught me about willingness is that it's an inside job. For me, it represents a shift in consciousness rather than something I can force to happen. It's more of an opening up to the possibility of change. Um, for me, it requires an awareness, it requires a humility, and then trust and faith. Um, Awareness and humility help me acknowledge that something's no longer serving. Um, Trust is that part about being in the flow. Trust is knowing that um, as I'm releasing things, that there's always going to be new things to take their place. And faith is the process of me believing that those things that are coming are bringing me closer to the person that I want to be, um, bringing me closer to the person that God or spirit, the universe needs me to be of maximum service to this, to each other, to all of you, to all of us that are experiencing this through our connection to each other. Or as we say in the 12-step program that I am a part of, let go and let God. Um, when I let go, I'm not just casting it off to the wind. I'm saying, okay, I believe uh, that I don't have to have this, that I don't have to be in control of this, that I don't have to be the end. um, a few weeks ago, this thought came to me in regards to this concept. Um, and I've driven people around me crazy continually bringing it up, but I'm going to share it with you guys anyway. Um, when I was younger, I was an avid bowler, and I still love to do it. I'd like to get back into it. Haven't quite got there yet, um, but I was thinking of it, like all these videos have been coming up in my social media of people bowling, and I'm like, oh man, that's so much fun. I need to get back in there. But I was watching this video, and it just like clicked for me that you know, when I'm bowling, or when any of us are, doing any kind of sporting activity that requires, throwing a ball, or something of that nature, like our form and our practice and our intention and our focus is all important. In bowling, it's the approach. You take the steps, the ball swings, you have everything lined up. You've got a spot that you're looking at so that you make sure that you throw the ball in the right place, and then you get to the line and you let it go. If you don't let it go, then you get to be part of a blooper reel at some point. But when you do let it go, you've still got 40 feet of wooden lane before it gets to the end, and you get to find out how you did. That space is where we leave room for God, for spirit, for a power greater than myself. Release to me has become, and this was the key that unlocked the willingness for a lot of the things that I was talking about earlier. the key to unlocking that release was when I understood that by releasing it, I was allowing um, the will of God to be done in my life. Now, in bowling, there's physics and there's a bunch of other things that, it's like, well, it didn't go the way I wanted because something else happened. But in my life, when I let go, I don't have to worry about it anymore. Now, it's still important that I do my best. It's still important that I take the right steps, that I have the right intentions. It's still important that I give my efforts to the things that I want to see happen in life. But the peace comes, the blessing of release comes through that trust, that faith that I was just talking about. The last thing that kind of came to me as I was, um, praying and meditating on this topic, um, I've got the examples that I've experienced in my own life of, most of the time getting into so much pain that I had to let go. Um, and then experiencing the peace uh, of of my acceptance of this power and my use of it in my life. Um, but there's somebody else's story that always kind of comes back to me when I start thinking about this. Most of you should be familiar with Nelson Mandela, who was the president of South Africa back in the 90s, and was, widely regarded as, one of the paragons of, peaceful reform and nonviolent change. Won the Nobel Peace Prize in 1993, and you know, but many people probably know, but maybe some don't, that decades before that, that's not who he was. That in the 1950s and 60s, he led angry protests, eventually turned violent against the government. Um, that he helped to run an organization which planned and carried out bombings of government, military, and infrastructure targets, and had said that they were prepared to engage in guerrilla warfare against the government if those tactics hadn't worked or didn't work. Um, that he spent 27 years in prison, some of those in like a notorious prison where the inmates were routinely neglected and tortured, giving plenty of cause for ongoing resentment. And at least one time over those years, I think it was in 1985, he rejected an offer of early release because the offer stipulated that he would have to reject violence as a political weapon, and so he would had decided at that point that it was better to stay in prison than to be released under those circumstances. Um, but something in his experience brought him to a place where he was willing to let go of um, violent tools and tactics that had failed to achieve the progress and change that he was so deeply committed to. Um, and so after he was eventually released and um, he was elected president of South Africa and became one of the great peacemakers of that generation. Somebody who said things like resentment is like drinking poison and then hoping it will kill your enemies. Somebody who said if you want to make peace with your enemy, you have to work with them and then they become your partner. Mm. So that's the last couple minutes here. I just, I, I made a short list of, these are the things that I try to do as part of my daily practice that help me have the bring this willingness to my life to let go of the things that aren't serving before they become painful to let go of. So the first one is mindfulness. It's just being aware, day by day, minute by minute. How am I feeling? What's going on? You know, if I'm not feeling great, happy, joyous, what is it that I'm attached to? What is the belief? What is the thought um, that's causing that? I use journaling, not every day, should do it every day, use it occasionally. Um, that just helps to open up. Um, it helps to bring things out that um, I might not have in that kind of the hamster wheel consciousness of the what am I going to do next? Okay, that's done. What am I going to do next? It gives me a chance to stop and say, what's really going on here? If I find myself continuing to struggle, use one of our tools. Um, I can use an affirmation. Um, Probably the biggest part of my practice is my meditation in the morning and at night, focusing part of my meditation on what are the things today that may not be serving me any longer that I can focus on letting go of tomorrow. And if I'm really struggling, I can use breathing exercises. I can use, and we're um, going to be using this here in a minute when we go into meditation. um, but just the exercise of breathing out as a release and letting that help me to to release other things as I breathe, making space for the breath in, the new life. Mm. So I'd like to now invite you to get comfortable with me. Just let ourselves breathe naturally, unforced, peaceful. Feeling the muscles in our body as they relax. Focusing on our breath as it comes in and out. Now we bring our consciousness to that inside part, that divine spark, that vibrating energy within us, that essence of life. We feel that energy as it fills us, as it fills our existence. Our consciousness shift, bring our focus on the feelings of our current situation. We think of the last thing that we've been concerned with. Maybe it was a minute ago, or maybe it was on the drive here this morning. Maybe it was last night or last week. Think of the last thing that has caused me concern and worry. And I ask, what is the thought or belief that I've attached to that has given rise to that feeling of worry, of concern? And as I look at that thought, that belief, I give it gratitude. I give it gratitude for the service that it has done for me in my life and my experience. I acknowledge that its purpose is served and it is no longer needed for the growth, for the experience of the person that I am growing into. And as I breathe in life, I breathe in oxygen. I see that life giving substance coming into my lungs and transitioning into my blood, my heart, moving that life throughout my body. And I see the unneeded carbon dioxide, unneeded belief, unneeded old thought leaving me along with that breath as I breathe out. And again, I breathe in life. I breathe out struggle. I breathe in trust. I breathe out fear. Now, gently, we just allow ourselves to come back into this room together, surrounded by those we love. When you feel comfortable, you can open your eyes and join me as we finish our service here. So, in closing, I'd like you to pray together with me the affirmative version of our prayer for protection here on the wall behind me. The light of God surrounds us. We are the light. The love of God enfolds us. We are the love. The power of God protects us. We are the power. The presence of God watches over us. We are the presence. Wherever we are, God is, and all is well. We are one.